As for space activities, we only engage in the same practices as other countries, including the United States.
China has always been open to conducting space exchanges and cooperation with the United States.
It would be space-based. We're going to engage with Russia, we're going to engage with our allies and partners.
Despite the public statements on cooperation in space, the three countries only seem to be inching closer to a full-blown war in outer space. After tens of space systems, hundreds of satellites, laser dazzlers and other weapons, the United States is planning to install modular state-of-the-art satellite jammers in space. Why should this worry the world? The Remote Modular Terminal jammers will be capable of disrupting all kinds of communications, especially Russian and Chinese ones, should the need arise, according to a statement by Space Force to Bloomberg News. Although the jammer will be ground-based, it is reportedly designed to blunt Chinese or Russian satellites from transmitting information about US forces during a conflict. The technology is already past prototyping. The Pentagon's Space Service branch tested the system for the first time earlier this year at 2 different locations, with control of the system at a third. The US Department of Defense has reportedly allocated funds to build 24 small, transportable and low-cost remote installations, with 11 scheduled to deploy before the end of the year at undisclosed locations. The new terminals are meant to supplement a much larger jamming weapon called the Counter-Communications System that's already deployed, and a mid-size one called Meadowlands. By providing the ability to have a proliferated, remotely controlled and relatively relocatable capability, according to the Space Force. The Meadowlands system has reportedly encountered technical challenges that have delayed its delivery until at least October, about 2 years later than planned. The devices aren't meant to protect US satellites from Chinese or Russian jamming, but to responsibly counter adversary satellite communications capabilities that enable attacks, as per Space Force. While US officials maintain that these weapons are responsible ones that wouldn't destroy satellites, but only disable them temporarily. Victoria Sampson, the Chief Director of Space Security and Stability at the Secure World Foundation, which produces an annual report on counterspace weapons, doesn't agree with this claim. She told Bloomberg News, the jammers aren't defensive weapons but rather are intended to attack rival capabilities. Sampson concludes, you can argue that it will only be used defensively, but I would say that is an offensive counterspace capability. Add it to the very small list of public US offensive counterspace capabilities that are reversible, temporary, non-escalatory, and allow for plausible deniability in terms of who the instigator is. According to US officials cited in a report by TechSpot, using jammers is more responsible than detonating a nuclear device in space. American spy agencies suspect that Russia is working on a new kind of space-based weapon known generally by military experts as a nuclear EMP that could threaten thousands of satellites by creating a massive energy wave when detonated. Republican Representative Mike Turner of Ohio, who is the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, set off a frenzy in Washington on February 14th. 2024, when he issued a statement saying his panel had information concerning a serious national security threat.
Russia is also developing a concerning anti-satellite capability related to a new satellite carrying a nuclear device.
By February 15th, the Joe Biden administration had publicly confirmed that Turner was referring to a new Russian nuclear anti-satellite capability, but officials steadfastly refused to discuss it further, citing the highly classified nature of the intelligence.
I know that Chairman Turner's letter to House members and his subsequent post on social media about a national security threat has prompted a lot of questions. While I am limited by how much I can share about the specific nature of the threat, I can confirm that it is related to an anti-satellite capability that Russia is developing. This is not an active capability that's been deployed. And though Russia's pursuit of this particular capability is troubling, there is no immediate threat to anyone's safety.
Russia was quick to deny these claims.
There is another question that isn't connected to the current events of the special military operation in Ukraine. It concerns the recent fuss in the West, including the United States, about the deployment of nuclear weapons in space. Our position is clear and transparent. We have always been categorically against and are now against the deployment of nuclear weapons in space.
From heavy-lift reusable rockets to satellite internet, China has made significant progress in space technology in recent years. In President Xi Jinping's speech at the 20th Party Congress in October 2022, space infrastructure was identified as a critical component of the Chinese Communist Party's legitimacy. Xi said, "We have witnessed major successes on multiple fronts, including human spaceflight, lunar and Martian exploration, deep sea and deep Earth probes, supercomputers, satellite navigation, quantum information, nuclear power technology." Space is also integral to China's strategic competition with the United States and a key component of its national power. The head of U.S. Space Command, General Stephen Whiting, on July 17th claimed, "China has hundreds and hundreds of satellites on orbit designed to find, fix, track, target and yes, potentially engage US and allied forces across the Indo-Pacific." While the US has accused China of using space as a foreign policy tool, Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator, in a candid response earlier this year, ended up, what observers say, calling out Washington's hypocrisy in the matter.
Could you explain how China uses space as a foreign policy tool?
How China does, or how all of us do?
Meanwhile, both China and Russia have accused the US of triggering an arms race in space.
For many years, the United States have been ignoring the proposals of Russia and China to prepare an agreement on preventing an arms race in outer space. The United States itself is developing this arms race in the most active way. In 2020, they created a space command and adopted a strategy, with one of the goals being to establish military domination in the cosmos.
The U.S. talks about the concept of so-called responsible conduct in outer space, but ignores its obligations under international treaties, posing a serious threat to the lives and safety of astronauts. This is a typical case of double standards.
Will Russia and China see the development and deployment of new jammers by the US as a provocation in the ongoing space war? Remains to be seen.